Hi, my name's Debbie Langston. I am the Diversity Consultant with the Department of Education and Early Years.
My name's Sardinha. I'm a former public school teacher and former education and policy coordinator here at the Black Cultural Society of Prince Edward Island.
This is a story that's been told a lot, so people may already know it, but some time back I was working in the schools as a youth service worker, and it was Black History Month was coming up, and I was trying to find some resources to share with the kids, and I came across some information about the bog, which I didn't really know about, and I spoke to the students and they didn't know about it. At the time, I was also the chairperson of the PEI Advisory Council on the Status of Women, and so I kind of took my information to them, and some of the board members knew about the bog area and others didn't, and so we decided that we needed to do something to change that. And so I was able to meet with the minister responsible for the status of women, and with her support we formed a committee to create a resource that talked about the history of black women in Prince Edward Island. And so we initially had a few members of our committee. I was in there as in a voluntary capacity, and we had our first meeting and then very quickly realised that we needed to involve community members. So we extended an invitation to the Black Cultural Society, and we extended an invitation to one of the descendants of the original Black Islanders, and so that's kind of where we got started.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great experience as well, because I'm a former educator as well. I've worked in the school board in a number of capacities, both here and in Ontario and around the world. And consistently, when it comes to North American education, we see that there's a huge lack of resources and our voices being centered in the curriculum, our black voices being centered in the curriculum. So having this opportunity come up, I think it was just so powerful, and it was something that, can't really say no to.
Again, I started as a volunteer. I have no experience of working around education and curriculum resources, and also I hadn't really led a project like that before, so I was really appreciative of the people that we had around the table, because there was so much support in different areas. We had somebody from the Interministerial Women's Secretariat who did the majority of the research and trawling through documents, and we had somebody from the Department of Education who did the curriculum piece, and so we had lots of different expertise. And Aaron came on board later on and then brought so we'd had some of the pieces developed already, but then Aaron brought this whole different perspective, and we were able to incorporate that, and that all helped to make the project even better than it was.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. And from my background, I finished my Master's of Education with a focus on policy, curriculum studies, and anti-racism, and in Ontario, in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, Toronto District School Board, the Peel District School Board, and even in Prince Edward Island, not having a focus in the curriculum as it pertains to local community black voices was glaringly obvious, and it impacts our students, right? And so the opportunity to center those voices of the students, but also centering the voices of our ancestors, I think is fundamental to making sure our students feel like they matter in our schools and in our curriculum, because they don't see themselves in it, right? And we've done a really great job at, I think anyway, making that happen.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of that is the really connecting with community. So we've had students, we did a consultation here with the community in the beginning of the project to kind of discuss it, and so we had some family and students come to that, and then we had them involved in creating videos that accompany the resource. So we've really tried to empower the students to see themselves represented as well, or for the community to see themselves represented, so it really was a collaborative effort, and that's one of the things that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
It was a really long process. It certainly took longer than we anticipated, so it's about 2.5 years, if not a bit more, and we had COVID that happened in the middle, but also because we had so many different people around the table, trying to get meetings was really logistically difficult, and so we ended up dividing into working groups and taking different pieces of the project, and I think trying to have an overall view of the project was the hard piece, and because you're caught up in it, you don't really appreciate what you're doing. And so now that we've finished it, and I have conversations with people, and I there when community members are watching the videos or they're interacting with the resource, and I see how meaningful it is to them. And to the descendants of the original islanders who've been trying to share this story for decades and nobody's been interested, and I see how powerful it is to them, like that makes me tear up, because then I realise like what a big deal this is, and we've made history, right? And hopefully we're setting a precedent for the future.
Absolutely, and that precedent I hope will go beyond one, unit in a curriculum, and eventually, will be something that we can see more broadly across our curriculums. I say curriculums plural, right? In thinking about how we all interact with curriculum as a lived document, as something that is living and breathing, and our students, need to be reflected in that. In terms of accomplishments, I think it was just so fantastic being able to connect with Black descendants here in Prince Edward Island, because historically, they've been forgotten in our textbooks, in our literature, and in the history. So being able to connect with Black descendants here in Prince Edward Island and hear their voices and hear what stories they have to offer, and have those real people who are here with us today share their stories and have those stories, reflected in this curriculum, I think was just so beautiful and magic.
It's one resource, it's a start. We need more resources. I know it was amazing to be able to centre the voices of women, because that's where the project originated, but there are other histories here that have been overlooked, and so I think it's beginning of potentially more, and I can see other ways for us to explore it. And I've already had teachers reach out to me, they're interacting with the resource and they're really excited about it, and then they're asking questions like, we talk about Roma having 12 slaves, and it's like, how's that being incorporated, because we go there for school visits and we're not hearing those conversations, so is that happening? I think out of the resource there's so many things have grown from that. Just the PI Museum and Heritage Foundation collaborated with us, and they created a resource that they can take to schools as a show and tell, and so kids can interact with their artefacts that might have been used in the bog. And from that and their conversations with Linda Hennessy, they've created a tour of the bog area which never existed before this resource, and so students can go there, and that may be extended to tourists to be able to go there. So just that one resource has created so many ripple effects, and I think that needs to continue. We need more resources from different perspectives, and not only Black, but centering Indigenous voices and other, we have a huge Lebanese community here, there's a huge Chinese community that's been here for a long time, so I'd like to see those kind of things continue, and I'd really like to see that kind of collaboration that we did, where we're including those voices in creating those resources.
Absolutely. Intersectionality is such an important point that I think needs to continue to be incorporated, and many people see it as sort of a buzzword, but when we look at the reality, we see that predominantly when we're talking about Black history, we're talking about cis, straight Black men when it comes to Black history, especially during Black History Month. So having the opportunity to center women's voices is so amazing, and hopefully in the future we can move towards centering Black trans women's voices and folks who are living with disabilities and who are also Black. Like there are so many possibilities. Black queers aren't reflected at all in our curriculum, in our literature that we are using in our schools. So moving, this is such a great step, and I think it's moving in the right direction. We saw last year in the States in 2022, maybe or 2021, there was a huge push to remove critical race theory from classrooms, right? And the reason why they think that if we talk about enslavement, we talk about Black history in the classroom, what we're saying to the white students is that they don't matter, and that could not be further from the truth. In fact, we see our students who are white in the classroom, when they're learning about Black history, their empathy only grows, their understanding of the world only grows, it does not shrink, and that is a huge misconception. Is we need more of our history inserted into the classroom, in our curriculum. We need more of our stories and voices told, so that students can learn to understand the world and some of the less great things that have happened throughout our history, but how to continue to shape our history so that it becomes wonderful. And Black history isn't just talking about enslavement. A lot of people think it's just talking about enslavement in the last 400 years, but our history is 315,000 years old. And if we continue to center the stories across, thousands and thousands of years, we're going to find that there's way more beautiful histories than there are, the small moment that we tend to focus on, right?
Well, I think it's about offering an opportunity for people that have been historically overlooked. And you're right, I'm seeing kind of narratives coming out that beyond the CRT now, that we're pushing back against DEI and talking about that creating harm, when actually what we're trying to do is give space to people that have suffered from harm. And that doesn't mean that we're harming children that are white. It means that we're having honest and open conversations, because if we're not talking about it, it doesn't go away, it continues. And really, ultimately, I think what we all want is a safer, more equitable world, and for all of our children. And I think one of the things recently I heard that was really despairing, that I started this work, and you've probably heard me say that I don't expect to see the changes in my lifetime, but I'm trying to set the path so that the next generation benefits from it. And then recently I was somewhere and I heard a young person speak, and they said the same thing, and that broke my heart, to hear a young person say, I don't think I'll see the benefit of the work I'm doing now in my lifetime. Just tells me that we're not where we need to be. And so I think people that are threatened by the work that we're doing are missing the big picture. It's about all of us.
100%. And that's such a good point. So often we wait until the verdict is really out when it comes to the harm that is being inflicted and the stories that need to be told, when in fact thinking about what's happening today with black folks who are queer and black folks who are trans, they're living a reality which is so often overlooked. Black women are living a reality which is so often overlooked. So let's have these conversations now and get ahead of the history, so that we can continue to incorporate it into our curriculum, into the ways in which we're interacting with our students now, so that maybe we can continue to see some change in our lifetimes.
When I tell the story of this resource a lot, and I've had people come and ask me, and I've interviews and different things, and I always talk about the history and how the resource got started. But I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from the resource is not how it got started, but how it drew community in its creation. And that's really been, and within my department, it's regarded as an innovative way that we've created this curriculum. And it wasn't difficult. It may have more challenges than somebody going off and writing a piece of curriculum in consultation with other teachers and what have you. But what we've done is ensure that the community's involved and their voices are in there. And so when I think about communities a way forward, this resource wouldn't exist without people like Linda Hennessy, who spent 30 years trawling through the archives, collecting the information, and really having it to herself, and because nobody was interested, but offering that space to her, and then bringing all the other partners in the community in, because all of the people around the table realised how important this history is, and then how then goes out to the community, and seeing the reactions that we've had already from children finally seeing themselves in the curriculum or in the education piece, and just seeing how emotional they are with it. And so that you're changing their experience of education just in that small moment. And I think that's how we kind of continue to grow, so that kids can see themselves, so that they can aspire to more. And then hopefully we'll have representation in education, and we'll create better outcomes for our children.
When I think about community too, I think of community in two ways. I think about our local community, who there are so many wonderful stories that can be told. And when I think about what it means to be a person who is black living in this world, we are not a monolith. We do not share all of our histories in common, but we do have a lot of elements that are in common. I think about people who are black who are living in Palestine, and people in Sudan, and people in Haiti who are living realities, and we are in so many ways privileged to be here and to be living here, and our students are very privileged to be living here, but we have a global community, and I think it's so important that we continue to connect with that, and by telling our stories locally and understanding our history and where we've come from, you know, the people who brought us here, we can better understand how we fit into that global community, so that when we think about advocacy, for example, we're not just thinking about people who, you know, share the same space as us, but we're thinking about those of us who maybe share our skin color around the world as well.
There's no justice for me without justice for you, right?
Absolutely.